Welcome to the 2021 Compliance Training presented by Shirley McMillan with SMAC Consultants. Disclaimer: all of the foregoing is commentary for informational and training purposes only. All information presented herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable. Guidelines. Everyone must follow these guidelines. These are the guidelines that compliance will use to review files. Please remember, these are subject to change at any time if the state agency or HUD decides to change their guidelines. We will send out an email should any of these items change. If you have any questions about a kickback or you do not fully understand why something has gotten kickback, please email compliance. You must think like an auditor when processing paperwork. The easier you make it for an auditor, the less they will dig in a file. Are you out of compliance? All recertifications are due 30 days before the effective date. There are no exceptions to this rule. If the resident has not completed their recertification by the effective date of the recertification, it is your responsibility as the manager to file holding over eviction paperwork. Evictions should be filed on the second day following the effective date. This is the only way you will not be out of compliance with the state agency. Please make sure that you are passing out your 120, 90, 60, and 30-day notices to each resident. Legal custody of a child. If someone has a child that is not legally theirs, by proof of birth certificate, they must have legal custody by way of court order, letter from DSS, or military. A notarized letter will not be accepted. Pregnancy. If you have a household member that is pregnant, the only type of documentation you can request is a self-affidavit stating that they are pregnant and the date they expect to give birth. The unborn child needs to be added to Boston Post and can be counted for income limit purposes. However, they cannot be used to make a household entirely made up of full-time students qualify. Verifications. All information disclosed on the application or questionnaire must be verified. Verifications are only valid for 120 days, 90 days for ACC. Third-party verifications are the required method. Verification forms are not to be altered or written on by management. All verification forms must be legible. There is to be no whiteout on any forms. Annual income is the amount of income that is used to determine eligibility of housing. HUD has defined annual income as the following: all amounts, monetary or not, that go to or are received on behalf of the family, head, spouse, co-head, or any other family member. All amounts anticipated to be received from a source outside of the family during 12-month period following admission or annual recertification effective date. Calculations. You are required to create a calculation tape listing all income and assets. The tape will need to be easy to understand and labeled showing the income and assets. NCHFA requires properties to use the time and date calculator at www.timeanddate.com. You will enter the beginning date located on the first pay stub or clarification and the ending date of the last pay stub in order to calculate the number of weeks. We will go further into how to use this in a few slides. Employment. Pay stubs are the required method of verification for employment. Must be within 120 days of move-in or recertification. If someone is paid weekly, you need 8 consecutive pay stubs. If someone is paid bi-weekly, you need 4 consecutive pay stubs. If someone is paid monthly, you need 2 consecutive pay stubs. You must also get the first pay stub of the year. This is going to show the year-to-date start date. You can also do a clarification on the year-to-date start date if you cannot get the first pay stub of the year. If the resident works somewhere that does not provide pay stubs, which is very rare, then the employment verification must be filled out completely by the employer. If any information is missing, a clarification statement must be completed. A clarification cannot be used to change information previously verified. Please be sure to review pay stubs for any additional income, assets, such as 401k, life insurance, multiple bank accounts, or stocks. When calculating employment income, you will use the gross amount. You must also get the first pay stub of the year so that you can see the beginning date. If your property has home on it, then you must have 2 full months of pay stubs. If it is a new job, they must wait until they have 2 months worth of pay stubs before they will qualify. That is for move-ins. Time and date. On the time and date calculation, make sure you are selecting the box that states include end date. This can change your weeks. If you are coming up with more than 52 weeks on your time and date, this could be a red flag that something is not right. Here is an example of the www.timeanddate.com. Once you go to the timeanddate.com, this is what the screen looks like. You will notice that where the red arrow is, that it is the date-to-date calculator. You're going to select the date-to-date calculator. And on this screen, you are going to enter the beginning date on the first pay stub of the year, and then the ending date of the last pay stub. Make sure that you click the little box to include the end date. Once you do this, you will click on Calculate Duration. You will then get to this screen. Notice to the right it has the number of weeks circled in red. You will use the total number of weeks. Do not use the number of days. Time and date. You will print this out by right-clicking on the page that shows the number of weeks, and you will tape your calculation tape to it. Do not cover up any of the information at the top, which are the dates, or to the right, the number of weeks. Here is an example of what your time and date and calculator tapes should look like. Notice I have circled in red the information that cannot be covered up. If you cannot get all your calculator tape on the time and date, then you can use a second sheet of paper to put that on there. Non-employment. If a household member 18 or older does not receive employment income, however they receive any other form of income, they must complete a self-certification stating they do not have any employment income. Social Security and pension. Social Security and pension letters must be within 120 days of either the move-in or recertification. You must scan in all pages of the Social Security pension letter, and you cannot use the annual letter they send out showing the increase. This is the one that has the perforated edges. You will use the Social Security amount before any deductions. If they have an overpayment deduction, then you will use the amount after the overpayment is deducted. Social Security increases will need to be calculated using the 1.3 increase for 2021. This could change throughout the years. You will not round these numbers, as it could cause a household to be over income at move-in. Example, if the 2020 Social Security amount was $1167.50 and you needed to calculate the 1.3% increase, here's how you would do it. $1167.50 times 1.3% equals $15.15. Then you're going to take the $1167.50, add the $15.15, which is going to give you a total of $1182.65. Then you'll take that $1182.65 times 12, which will give you a total of $14,191.80. Never round. Recurring gift. Please make sure that if you have a household receiving a recurring gift, that the person giving the gift is the one that signs and has the paperwork notarized. Recurring gifts are calculated for the entire year unless specified otherwise. Self-employment. If someone has self-employment, they need to have one or more of the following items: the tax return with Schedule C showing their self-employment. Receipts or a printout can be self-generated showing their income. PayPal, Cash App, or other bank statements showing payments received. If they do not have a tax return, they need to do a self-employment form along with a self-affidavit stating the reason they have not filed taxes and that the information they need to list what they provided is true and accurate and that this is all they have to verify income. You will count the net profit loss amount that is showing on the Schedule C. Public assistance. If an applicant or tenant state on their questionnaire that they receive any type of public assistance, to include food stamps, you will need to verify it with DSS. The only type of public assistance that you count is TANF or Work First. You do not count food stamps, but you do need to verify. If they do not receive public assistance, you will need to have them do a self-certification. Child support. Child support income is calculated using the last full 6 months of child support received. You will need to get a printout of the child support or divorce decree if it is through the court systems. If child support is not received in one of the 6 months that you will be using, you will count that month as 0. If the applicant resident state that they receive child support directly from the individual, you will need a recurring gift filled out and notarized. Also, if the applicant states that they do not receive child support, you can either get a letter from the child support office or you can call 1-800-992-9457. This is for North Carolina only, and do a clarification. And I listed the steps for you to use the automated system. You will then create a clarification statement on whatever the system tells you. You will be surprised how many people state they do not receive child support, but they do. If you call the 1-800 number and there are payments received, then at that point you will need a printout from child support. Unemployment. You will count unemployment for a full 52 weeks. Remember, we are not counting the extra $300 of unemployment income that they are receiving for the pandemic assistance. Excluded income. The most common excluded income is live-in aid income, earned income from children under 18, such as employment. Here's a list of newer incomes to be aware of: Grubhub, Postmates, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Uber, Lyft, Etsy, Redbubble, Facebook Marketplace. Grubhub, Postmates, DoorDash, Uber, Uber Eats, and Lyft, they are paid weekly or monthly or cash out option. Some provide earning statements and others screenshots of earnings from the app. Here is a list of income that is not allowed to be counted: Airbnb, Future Stay, HomeAway, or any similar sites that tenants can rent out their apartments, which is a lease violation. Student rule. Households consisting entirely of full-time students are not eligible unless they meet one of the 5 exceptions. All members are married and entitled to file a joint tax return. Note, they do not have to be married to each other if you have 2 adult household members. Student is enrolled in a program similar to JTPA. Student was previously in foster care program. Student receives TANF. Single parent and children, none of which are dependents of another individual except in situations where the other parent claims minor children. Student financial aid. If receiving rental assistance, Section 8 or home, student financial aid is included in income unless 23 or older years old with dependent children or student who lives with parents. If there is no rental assistance, student financial aid is excluded. The home rule on student financial assistance is the same as Section 8. Calculations for financial aid would be financial aid minus tuition and fees. If you have anyone who is in school, college, you will still need to obtain the following: 1 school schedule, financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 2 school schedule, financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 3 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 4 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 5 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 6 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 7 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 8 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 9 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 10 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 11 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 12 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 13 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 14 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 15 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 16 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 17 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 18 financial aid award letter, cost of tuition. 19 financial a If you have someone that is in high school but is 18, a self-affidavit will be sufficient. Assets. What is an asset? An asset is an item of value owned. Common types of assets: checking, savings, whole life insurance. Remember, we do not count term life. 401k, stocks, bonds, annuities, IRAs, real estate, prepaid cards such as SMI1, Cash App, PayPal, Green Dot, etc. New types of assets: Square Cash, Cash App, PayPal, GoFundMe. Asset verification. You must fax the bank at least 2 times before using bank statements. The only exception to this is if you get a letter from the bank stating they do not verify or there is a cost to verify. Remember, we cannot have residents or applicants pay for verifications. At this point, you can use bank statements, all pages and all 6 consecutive months for checking. Most banks will fill out the verification. PNC is the only bank that there are issues with them filling out the verification. You will need to go through each and every page to ensure there is no other deposits that are being made into this account other than what you have verified. If there are, then you will need to verify these as well. The next slide is just a list of common bank fax numbers. These sometimes do change, so just make sure you are keeping up with that information. Here is another list of common banks and their numbers, fax numbers. Assets. Checking, you must use the 6-month average. If the bank gives you less than a 6 months average, then you will use what they give you. However, if they give you a 12-month average, then you will divide that amount by 2. Savings, you use the current balance. 401k, use the total amount and remember to deduct the 10% penalty from the total. The interest rate will be the current rate of return. If there is no current rate of return, then you will need to clarify what the current one is. IRA, use the current balance times any interest rate. If there is a penalty for early withdrawal, then you will need to deduct this. CDs, use the current balance times any interest rate. If there is a penalty for early withdrawal, then you will need to deduct this. Prepaid cards, use the current balance, and there is no interest rate on prepaid cards. You can use an ATM printout or you can use an online printout. 401ks and IRAs. 401ks and IRAs are another form of assets. You will need a current printout of these in order to calculate the income correctly. For 401k, you will need to calculate as follows. You take the full balance, not just the vested balance, times 10%, which is the penalty, and that's going to give you the penalty amount. Most 401ks have a penalty unless you have reached the age of 72. You will deduct that 10% penalty from the full balance, and then you will take that amount times the rate of return. Example, your balance is $748.62 and the rate of return is 4.85%. You're going to take that $748.62 times 10%, which is $74.86. Then you're going to take the $748.62 minus the $74.86, which gives you $673.76. Then take that amount, the $673.76, times 4.85%, which is the rate of return, and that gives you $32.67. Stocks and mutual funds. For stocks, you will get current information and take gross dividend and clarify if there's an interest rate. If so, then multiply the gross dividend by the interest rate. For mutual funds, you must verify current number of shares and current price per share. These are not so common. For households that get Social Security or SSI benefits and state they do not have a bank account, you will need to verify their prepaid card or payee. It is very rare that they mail out these checks anymore. Life insurance. If someone has whole life insurance, you will need the actual policy or fax off the life insurance verification. You will need to take the cash value of the policy for the year that we are in. Example, if I purchased the policy in 2010 and we are in 2021, then I will use the cash value for year 11. We do not count term life insurance. Prepaid cards. Prepaid cards such as PayPal, Cash App, Apple Pay, etc. will need a current balance and a 1-month transaction history printout. Review these transactions, and if there are multiple payments to them from a repeat person, a recurring gift form will need to be completed. Regular prepaid cards such as Direct Express, SMI1, GreeDot, etc. only need a balance inquiry and do not need a 1-month transaction history. Real estate. If someone has property or land, you will need to calculate this as an asset. You will need to get the deed, the current payoff. If paid off, then you will need a self-affidavit stating it has been paid off, and the current tax value. How to calculate. You're going to take the tax value and deduct 6%, which is the cost to sell. Then you will take the tax value minus the 6% amount and get that total. If there is a payoff, then you will take that total and minus out the payoff amount. Once you get this amount, you will need to look at the deed to see how many people are on it and then divide that amount by the number of people on the deed. Here is an example of how to calculate real estate. You have the tax value of $164,950. The payoff is $75,427, and the number of people on the deed is 2. So you're going to take the tax value of $164,950 times 6%, which is the cost to sell. That's going to give you $9,897. Then you're going to take the tax value of $164,950 and minus out the $9,897. This is going to give you $155,053. So you're going to take the $155,053 and minus out the payoff of $75,427, which is going to give you $79,626. You're going to take that $79,626 and divide it by 2, since there are 2 people on the deed, which is going to give you the $39,813. The $39,813 is what you will count in Boston Post. Some items that can be considered as personal investments are gems, jewelry that is not worn daily, coin collections, and antique cars that are not driven daily. Useful tips. Be sure all paperwork is within 120 days. Be sure all members 18 and older of the household sign all paperwork. If you have someone that has a power of attorney, they must bring in court documents stating so. A self-affidavit or non-recorded document cannot be used. All members 18 and older must have a credit and background check ran. 12 credit hours for school is considered full-time, and anything less than that will be considered part-time unless there is no physical campus in the state of North Carolina they can attend, and then they would be considered part-time. That is for North Carolina only. South Carolina, you have to go based on what the school states. Live-in care attendants cannot remain in the unit once the original household member moves out, the person they were caring for. The live-in aide must move. If you have a household member that is not on the original lease and is added on later on, and the original household member who qualified the unit moves out, then the person that was added on must move, unless you want to qualify them prior to the original household member moving out, and you will still create a move out, move in situation. Useful tips continued. Supplemental form must be completed on each household, and whatever the household puts down is what needs to go in Boston Post. For example, if they mark the box that states they do not want to provide this information, then you will not put anything in Boston Post. If they fill out the form, then you need to make sure that you put this information in Boston Post for each household member. Clarifications. You cannot only use a clarification to verify income, assets, etc. You must get documentation showing proof. A clarification cannot change a verification that has already been provided. The clarification should be used to enhance the understanding of what it is. Landlord. If someone does not have a landlord reference, you must have a self-certification stating this. You need to question any addresses that show up on their background. Most of the time, they have had a landlord. No whiteout, period. The resident will mark one line through it and initial it. You will no longer be allowed to mark through sign dates or write over a sign date. It will be kicked back for you to have redone. Required at move-in, sign lease and sign tick must be scanned into Boston Post on the day of move-in. What they tell you first is usually the truth. Once you have already received documentation about a household, they cannot have it changed in order to qualify. An example, if you have a household that is receiving a recurring gift as well as other income, however, this is going to put the household over income, then they cannot change this to make it work. Calculation tapes. Calculation tapes that are not legible or labeled will be kicked back. This is important when we send information off to the agencies. Signatures. If you have more than one adult household member and they cannot fill out their paperwork together, then they will need to fill out separate paperwork due to the dates. Make sure the manager's signature matches the household signature dates. The only exception to this if you are using Secure Sign, and then the dates could differ. Under 5K form. On the under 5K form, you do not use zeros for assets they do not have. You must draw a straight line down through each asset not used. Checklist. Use the checklist when completing move-ins and recertifications. These are located in Boston Post. Supplemental form. Supplemental forms. If they do not fill out the information on the form, do not put this information in Boston Post. Rents and utilities. Before submitting a file, make sure that BP is pulling the correct rent and utilities. Boston Post versus the physical file. Make sure the physical file at the property matches what is in Boston Post. When corrections are done, a lot of times they are not put in the actual file. Annual student form. At move-in, annual student forms must have the move-in date and effective date at the top before the move-in will be approved. These dates will automatically generate for recertifications. EIV for HUD properties only. Existing tenant searches need to be sent to Sharon, and the email needs to be scanned into Boston Post for all HUD move-ins. This does not pertain to Hope 6 at this time. Power of attorney. If someone has a power of attorney, you need to make sure that it states they have the authorization to make decisions for real estate, rental, or leases. Also, once a person passes away, the power of attorney becomes null and void. Do not make up answers on clarifications. Compliance does spot check these and will call to ensure these are correct. Clear and legible. Make sure that all documents are clear and all information is legible. Do not submit documents that are cut off. Due to COVID, we will allow pictures of documents. However, all information must be legible and it must include all information. This would be a last resort to get the documentation. Prior year certifications. Make sure to check the prior year certification to ensure that all information is being verified. If they no longer have the employment, you will need to verify the termination. If the employer will not verify, then you will need a self-affidavit from the employee and a clarification as to why they will not complete the termination form. If they no longer have an asset, you will need to get a self-affidavit stating they no longer have. If someone moves out of the household, an addendum to the lease needs to be done and scanned into the next recertification. Never ask anyone to backdate paperwork. Lease terms, make sure when you're completing a recertification or move in, the lease term is correct, 1 year or month to month. Ink, only use blue or black ink. No pencil or colored ink is to be used. Interims, this is for HUD properties only. Interims must be completed within 14 days of notification by the resident. Addition to the lease, if someone is added onto the lease after the initial move-in and then the original household member moves out, the person that was added must move out too. They will need to qualify the unit if they are interested in staying. Scanning. To simplify the scanning process, we are asking each of you to scan all items that pertain to each other together. Example, anything dealing with employment will be scanned together as one attachment. This will include all household members' income. It must be in order. Scanner settings. Check your scanner settings to ensure that it is set correctly and that it is not scanning blank pages. Also, make sure that you are not scanning items upside down and that all pages are being scanned in the same direction. Kickbacks. When you have a kickback and you want to see what the file has been kicked back for, you can go to Create Certification and see the rejection. You will need to hit the green back button in order not to push it through until you get the corrections done. Key program. North Carolina Housing Finance Agency requires each property that has the key program to put all vacancies, even if you have met your targeted number of key units, into the VNR system in RCRS. Anytime you receive a 30-day notice to vacate, give a 30-day notice to vacate, or as we are all aware, people just up and move out, you will need to put these units into VNR, which is in RCRS. At this point, DHHS will either send you a referral or will release the unit. DHHS has 30 days to send you a referral or a release email. In order to make sure that each property is doing this, you will be required to print out the release email and to scan it into Boston Post with your move-in for that unit. This will let me know that this process has been completed. Please make sure that you are not rounding your numbers on the key calculation worksheet until you get to the rent amounts. At this point is where you will round either up or down depending on the amount. 0.50 and higher, round up. 0.49 and lower, round down. DHHS will no longer pay key subsidy for unit events that exceed 12 months. Top 10 file review non-compliance deficiencies. Number 1, RCRS does not match signed and uploaded tick. Number 2, move-in date entered in RCRS does not match documents. Number 3, all documents not uploaded. Number 4, utility allowance not updated timely. Number 5, documents not properly scanned or for wrong household. Number 6, unnecessary documents uploaded. Number 7, insufficient source documentation. Number 8, proper completion of the under 5,000 form. Number 9, not using the required NCHFA employment verification form. And number 10, not having all household members 18 and older sign paperwork.